tēnā koutou katoa. Ngā mihi I te whare. I was going to say ngā mihi I te whare ki te mātauranga te ao, but we're not in the library. So really that meant, blessing or thanking the whare that holds all the knowledge of the world. Which I guess we could just sort of say it's a hop, skip and a jump next door, isn't it? So thank you for being here today and for indulging in what I'm about to share with you, which is a modern day historical account really, but that drifts back in time to the times of our ancestors. How many sailors are in the room? Time you went out. You'll pick up my mistakes maybe. But no, thank you for coming along. Hope or high water, following in the wake of our ancestors. I've got a whole lot of notes and I can rove around, but I'm not going to pick on anyone, so great for you to sit up front. So I'm a little bit of a curious person, and sometimes when I'm interested in something which stems from way back when I was a child, and it really is Thor Heyerdahl's fault because when I think about waka, I thought about the mono-hulled waka, really, and I used to think, how did our people ever get here in one of those? And then going through school, one day, our teacher put in front of us a book by Thor Heyerdahl, The Kontiki, and I used to think, wow, that's pretty amazing, this guy built the Kontiki raft. And then, you think about your journey in life is what might happen when you're young. All of a sudden you forget about it and you go on with life, don't you? And then somewhere on your journey, something happens and you think, oh, that's why you learned that or that, So it's kind of like, I love that play that time has with our own experiences and journeys through life. So, in early 2012, I learned of an epic voyage that had already sailed the first leg of its journey from Aotearoa, New Zealand to Hawaii. And it was preparing, the crew were preparing their waka to embark on the second leg from San Diego to Aotearoa, calling in on all the various islands along the way, and include the Tuamotus, the Cocos Islands and Galapagos and so forth. And what they were doing were fostering the need to protect our oceans, our environment and our marine species from the toxic and harmful effects of pollution. We're talking about huge drifts of rubbish, a lot of it plastics, but not all of it, that is swept along on the oceans, and they entrap marine life and bird life and become part of the alarming number of enormous gyres. Now, I had never heard of these things called gyres, but these gyres are large masses, almost the size of countries, of plastics and rubbish that get, that all this stuff floats into. The currents drag all this stuff into these huge gyres, and they're massive. And plastics haven't been around for that long, but the impact they're having on the planet is really, really alarming. And so these gyres that form when the currents converge on the planet, and then what happens there is that with the breaking down process of plastics into microplastics, into what voyagers call plastic soup. And so the toxic feast is ingested by marine creatures, often before it's reached the microplastic stage. For example, a sea turtle, on this voyage, a sea turtle was discovered, very large sea turtle, ancient creature, was discovered with a piece of plastic poking out of its mouth and the other end coming out of its bottom. And so they got that turtle on board and they pulled that piece of plastic out, and it measured over 1 metre long. And that's the type of stuff that's happening in our oceans that, if we're not, if we don't raise our consciousness about that, it really is a tragic thing, and our oceans are vital, like everything, to our existence as human beings. But anyway, I need to do, you're going to do that for me? Oh, wonderful. I've got a pointer. Yeah, so And I'm just trying to think. I think can you skip to the next one? So this is the voyage I'm talking about is Te Mana or Te Moana, and it was I will get to that a bit further on. I'm just looking at my notes thinking, I've got slide 1. This was at 3 a.m. in the morning. Number 1, number 2. But the Mana o Te Moana voyage was unique in that these waka had solar panels to generate energy to charge batteries to run pods that enabled them to navigate their way in and out of port. They relied solely on wind, and although fitted with GPS, they relied on ancient navigation. And navigating by the stars, it's the ancient star compass that voyagers had been guided on for centuries. So the star compass that you see there is what they use over in the Pacific in Hawaii and Tahiti and so forth. So, and if you can click to the next one, in Māori terms for waka voyaging, we use te kapehu whetū, the Māori compass that divides the 360 degrees around a canoe. And often that te kapehu whetū is carved onto the deck of the waka. So it's very much, when I was sailing on the waka, I'd go out there, we all had shifts of about 4 hours each, and there were probably 4 of us 6 of us on deck at any one time, and we all had to have a go at navigating by the stars, and I was hopeless at it, but lucky there were people there that knew about sailing. I was sort of like a voyeur on a voyage. But I learned about these, and we used to sit there and talk around, what are the names of them all, and I don't know about you, but as I'm getting older, I can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning. But it's a wonderful thing, and if any of you know or have heard of Sir Hector Busby, Busby, up in Aurere, up in the far north, he has a star compass based on this, set out on his grounds there right next to the foreshore, and he has this amazing kind of like a revolving computer seat there where you can just go and align yourself with each of the po that mark each of the stars and the compass, and just know where you are at any given time up there. It's a really wonderful tool for learning how to navigate. This is really interesting because I think we missed something. No, this is slides. Which slide are we on? We're on 6. Did we do 3 and 4? And what about 5? 5 or 7? Did we do something before? Oh, okay. Okay. All right, we'll go back to that slide 5. Oh my God, it's so confusing. Anyway, the star compass method was the same method that Tupaia. Have you heard of Tupaia? Yeah. That Tupaia, he was the highborn Tahitian navigator. He came from the island of Raiatea in the Society Islands group, and he was a leading Arioroi priest. And the Arioroi priests were very, you had to have certain creative talents to be a priest of that level. And Tupaia was that priest. You also had to have a kind of a physique and all of that sort of stuff, and he had all of those things. But about Tupaia, what he was amazing as is that he was an amazing navigator. He also was a great cartographer. He was an artist, and so he created one of the very first mappings of the Society Islands and the places that he voyaged around in that area. So he was the leading priest for Tapu Tapu Atia. Could you go back? Sorry, I need to go back here. So this is Tapu Tapu Atia is the ancient marae of Raiatea, and it's still there today, but it's mostly underwater now. But you can get access to it if the locals can show you the access to it through their ground, their land there to this place. It's quite spooky when you get there, and you see these different carvings there. So that's a tiki carved into the rock on Tapu Tapu Atia Marae. Back in time, in Tupaia's time, there would have been, similar sort of offerings to the gods and things like that went on at Tapu Tapu Atia. So hence the name, I guess, Tapu Tapu Atia, the Atia that's sacred. Yeah. So that's where Tupaia came from. And as you all know, he assisted Captain Cook when on board the Endeavour when he went about exploring Aotearoa Australis and circumnavigation of Aotearoa, and helped because he could he had the language, and the Polynesian language was kind of just a variation through the islands. Really, he could communicate with the islanders along the way, which helped Captain Cook enormously. All right. So, as you know, Tupaia was a bit of an artist, and I think, did we have that slide with the book title on? Yeah, that one. He was a bit of an artist, and I'm sorry their heads are chopped off, but I stole this off the website, and I thought, it's not complete, so they can't have me up for copyright, right? But this book was written by Joan Druitt, and it's a wonderful account of Tupaia, and that's a picture that Tupaia drew of himself giving a crayfish to Captain Cook. So he was an artist, and so as well as drawing pictures like that, he drew this map. Now also this is a little bit cut off on the sides, but some of the names and the map that he drew based on his own navigation around the islands, which is quite amazing, and it's like it says there, it's considered to be one of the most famous and artefacts to emerge from those early encounters. So when we think about Tupaia, and he didn't have a long life really. He, by looking at it, he maybe made it from 1725 to about 55, 65, somewhere around there. He didn't have a long life. He actually died in Batavia, when the Endeavour went up there, and his servant also died with him. So when he went on Cook's voyage, he took with him his servant, whose name was Tiako. And so they're buried in Batavia. Now, in 2010, does anybody know this man?
Know of him.
You know of him. I'm not sure if he's still alive, because at the time this was done, he was nearing his 70s then, and I did find a obituary online, but I'm not sure whether it was for him or not, because it was in Dutch and I couldn't read that. So, so I don't know. But this man was the most incredible visionary I've ever met in my life. Dieter Pullman. He founded the Okeanos Foundation after he was a photographer as well as a documentary maker, filmmaker. He was a filmmaker, photographer, and he loved going out on his yacht and filming the ocean and everything that floated upon it and under it and over it, kind of thing. And it was while he was in the ocean that he had an encounter with a white sperm whale and filmed the encounter. And he was diving with the whale, and somehow from that moment on it transformed him. A deep connection with whale, and transformed him. And from that moment on, he dedicated his life to protecting marine habitats and the marine species. And he became known as the Whale Man. So Dieter Pullman, you can go to the next one. Dieter Pullman set about constructing 7 waka or waka moana, depending on where you are in the Pacific, waka haurua, double-hulled sailing canoes based on traditional methods. And the reason for that is that he wanted to, a bit like the 7 waka that migrated to Aotearoa in the 1300s, 1350 I think it was, that great fleet migrated here. So he decided in modern terms to create 7 waka haurua. And the purpose of that was to like I mentioned before, was to sail around, fostering the need to protect our oceans, protect our marine life, raise awareness of the plastics pollution and any other rubbish that was being tossed into our oceans, like the ocean was a big wash pool, endless wash pool. And so we have the 7 waka there. We have Haunui, which is usually birthed alongside the marine, what is it called, the Maritime Museum in Auckland. We have Te Matau, a Maui, that one is in, I think, Tauranga. We have Te Moana, that one is in Kawhia. So the 3 New Zealand waka. We have Utunialo, the Fijian waka, Galofa from Samoa, Marumaruatia in the Cook Islands. Sadly, someone vandalised Marumaruatia and burned it down. And I was over there just after that happened, and it was so sad to see it up on the hard, and its hulls were just scorched. So it was brought back to New Zealand and repaired. And then Whawhaiti, the Tahitian waka, which if you ever sail with Tahitians, or if you ever think about it, do it. It is so much fun. Yeah, so much fun. From the flowers that you get put on you, and the oil, and just everything about it's fun. But of course, back in our time, in 1350, the great fleet that sailed, we had Aotea, Kurahopo, Mā Tātua Waka, Te Arawa, Tainui, Takitimu, and Tokumaru. So apart from Kurahopo and Tokumaru, I whakapapa to the captains of all the others in my lineage, on my father's side. So it makes me more and more curious, things like that, when I haven't always known that. And so things like that really spur me on to want to understand more about how my ancestors got here. And the only way to do that was to jump on a waka and give it a go. So that's what I did, essentially. And I'm a great sailor. I get seasick just when they pull the anchor up, it's terrible. But so those are the waka, and I just want to play you this video clip from Te Moana or Te Mana or Te Moana. That's how I'm doing. Sorry. That wasn't the soundtrack at all. Here we go. Whoops.
The Pacific Ocean is the lifeblood of our people. It's our home. We're casting off on a 2-year adventure, carrying the message of just how precious our ocean is to us. Reviving the wayfinding brilliance of our ancestors, raising a new generation to become stewards for our ocean.
That's Haunui waka under sail.
There'll be people out there who look at it and say, what are these crazy people up to? But these are some of the first steps that we're taking to revive the knowledge that allows us to live in harmony and live in sync with our environment.
The hardest part is to make everyone see what we see. And once we can make that happen, I think we have a chance.
I just say that Dita bankrolled the whole project?
Yeah, so Dita, I was getting to that.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, Dita Pullman was incredible. He did bankroll the whole project for these, and he did so much more after that as well. Okay, so there I am. Hang on a minute. I come this blind to the bat. No, you're right. You're right, pointer. Every navigator has to have a pointer. Star compass. In 2012, in January 2012, I left New Zealand having just met someone who was about to leave for Los Angeles. Was about to leave for San Diego to join the Waka fleet as crew. And I was heading off to Europe for a bit of a 3-month to-be-hiding trip. And anyway, I was getting towards the end of my journey when I got an email saying, are you going home or can you come to Tahiti? And I said, no, I actually have to go home. I've got house responsibilities, stuff like that. Anyway, I got home and I had tenants in my house and I was living with my daughter, and that goes really well for a few days. And so I went down to the travel agent and bought a ticket to Tahiti and ended up going over there and found myself strapped into a jeep, okay? And the jeep, and then I found myself travelling along the most treacherous road I'd ever travelled on, to a little beach village on the southeast coast of Tahiti called Tautira. Has anyone been there, Tautira? You've been there? Yeah. Yeah. Oh well, you know it then. And so this is where the Waka had just come through and had pretty much arrived at Tahiti, but they had to stay at that southernmost part until they could get customs clearance to come right the way into Papeete. So when I got there, what I found was the most amazing sight of all these Waka shored up on the foreshore there. And I couldn't believe my eyes. I had never seen anything so magnificent in my life as that vision there, regardless of the fact that over every piece of rigging there was underwear, towels, you name it, all kinds of clothing. They hadn't, it's when you're at sea in one of those, washing clothes is a real mission, let alone washing yourself. And there they all were. They were so grateful to be there. And that was the sight that I came into, and I thought, how cool is this? Let me go to the next one. And on the beach were the crew, and all sitting there, we are grateful to be on land for a while and being able to have a wash. And if you see the woman in the blue trousers there right at the front, she's a German woman who's a nurse. She lives in Dunedin. She's a nurse, and she and her husband joined up thinking that they wanted a big adventure. They both sail, but she is the main sailor. And that woman there was on this voyage, and she was on Honui, part of the Honui crew, and I'll get to that a bit later. But because she was a nurse, she had to fix up all the broken bones and the broken ribs and every other thing that happened there. But she's an incredible woman and a lifelong friend now. And for me, those moments where you meet people and there's in amongst a whole heap of people, there's those that you really resonate. She's one of those. She speaks terrible English and I speak terrible German, but it's like that. So part of the celebrations that were happening that day that I arrived was that the locals of Tautira were putting on a great big feast, and all the crew had to line up all around the feast venue. So these people, here is Annette again, here. Oh, her name was Annette, by the way. Annette, and this is Anna, and this man here is Duncan. Right, author of the book that I'm getting to eventually. Hopefully we don't run out of time. But so all of those people were there, and then there was this great, amazing welcome, and then the feast inside. So the Tahitian people, when I got there, I was sort of like feeling like a duck out of water. Everybody, all the canoe, the Waka people fraternity got together in their own clusters and were talking about their adventures and all sorts. So I went into the kitchen and helped prepare the food with the Tahitian women, and it was just lovely to do that because I got to sort of, hear their stories as well, mostly in French. But, yeah. Next one. So Annette, I spoke about Annette. So her partner Ian, Annette. So what she's holding on to up there is the rudder, or what they call the hoy. And Annette, sometimes in rough weather, that hoy it takes more than one person, more than two people. Sometimes four people, and sometimes it has to have a rope put around it to be able to stop it from, because when the currents catch it, it can whack you like you wouldn't believe. And so sometimes they tie a line around it so that you can actually move it with the line. So that's Annette's husband, Ian. Yeah, so my connection with Annette became really firmly cemented when eventually, once the waka were cleared and were able to sail in Papeete and moor there, Annette was all too keen to get off the waka. We went and explored the markets in Papeete, and then we made our way to a workshop where we knew some of the local carvers, and one of our own New Zealand carvers were creating this amazing statue, and they really were under pressure to get it finished because the next day it needed to be put in place. So, and if you can imagine Tahiti at that time of year was really humid, it was very sticky, there was rain and everything. And so when we got to the workshop, the carvers were busily carving out the feet of the statue and other parts of it, and then others were starting to sand it. And in the end, we got invited to become part of the sanding people after 5 sort of thing, when every other person that was involved with it had finished work. Because they just needed to sand it off and then put on the lacquer to protect it. So we got all that done, put on the lacquer, and then it was meant to dry. They had fans and things going in the workshop, and it was meant to dry. But it didn't quite happen that way. And so by the time, the next day, by the time it was time to journey the carving to its, not its final resting place, but to the place where they were going to celebrate it, it was raining. And so they wrapped the carving in plastic. And the humidity in that created some condensation between the wood and the plastic. And when they put it onto Haunui, some of the plastic, they had a look at it and they thought, oh my God, you know how wood gets that milky thing when lacquer and that hasn't quite set? Well, honestly, it looked like Tupaia's statue had a great big case of acne. So what they did then was they had to decide who was which. So what they were going to do was they put it on the deck of the waka, one of the waka. They had to transport it from one part of Papeete, from the main centre, down to where the I think it was kind of like where all the yachts rope up, and to the ceremonial space. So the New Zealand waka Haunui was chosen to lead the fleet and chosen to carry Tupaia down to that area. When we got there, all the waka rafted up and all the crew came over. They unwrapped Tupaia, and then a lot of the crew hopped onto the foreshore. They were draped in plantain plant, wreaths of plantain around their heads, around their necks. They were joined by the village people, and all of those crew and those people that were there carried Tupaia right the way through to the sound of music, and it was just the most beautiful thing. The women with their A's on and with their A on, and it was just the most magnificent thing. So while I can't show you the footage because somehow it got lost off my computer, I have, with the permission of Johan, who was a Voyager and documentary maker that I met while we were there, he has supplied this It's another ceremony that you right there?
Yep.
Another ceremony for the placement of the Tupaia statue, where it is currently. So that's just a little sneak preview of the type of ceremony, but the original one was like you couldn't see the foreshore for people. The Tahitian woman had tiare oil, and they anointed the carving with this oil. There were plantain draped around Tupaia, similar to that, but it was adorned with this, and it was a very emotional experience, as you can imagine, and the music. Oh, the music. It was just such a wonderful, wonderful thing to witness. And this is about the point of time where I met the captain of Honui Waka. So this is Duncan Morrison, captain of Honui Waka for that, for pretty much most of that voyage, both the first leg and the second leg. And here he has, he's with a Nofo, or who we called Nofo. And Nofo was voyaging as part of the Tongan Voyaging Society on Utu Nialo, on the Fijian Waka. And Utu was just the most incredible woman. She's like about this tall, this wide. No, not really muscly, I mean, you know, but oh my gosh, she went on to get her, she went on to skip an all-woman waka journey after this. She's an amazing woman. So this is Duncan Morrison. Now the thing about Duncan was, he wasn't Māori, he wasn't Pacifica, he was Pākehā. And he was in a Pacifica environment because he had a love of sailing, but he had this affinity with Pacifica people. And so when he did his training, he trained with all of the Pacifica navigators. Yeah, those that had already been to the special schools to learn how to navigate by the stars in the traditional way. And Duncan had been trained in that and was still learning. He was always saying, I'm still on my learning journey. So Duncan was very aloof at first, and I thought, oh, he's a bit stuck up. And I know that he hadn't made, as captain, he made some, it's not enemies, but he got offside with a lot of the crew because he had to pull them into line. And I'll tell you more about that later. So when we were in Papiti, his long-term girlfriend, Anna, had come across from Arizona. And she would come across at every possible moment that she could. She would come across to be with Duncan because she knew that how the long voyages and the stress of those long voyages impacted on himself. And so too with the other captains. You know, they all had to have that kind of level of support. So when we met, we talked about waka voyaging, and I decided then, that's when I decided that I really wanted to experience the ways in which my ancestors arrived. And so, and for that reason I shared with you my ancestral connection to 5 of those waka captains. So when Duncan arrived back in Auckland, he was asked if he'd like to remain as skipper of Honui. He was at that time training up wannabe voyagers, and people either got it or they didn't, but it's a wonderful thing to do if you're never too old to join those voyaging crews to learn how to, you know, even if it's just to go out with them and support, it's such a wonderful thing to do. But then So a group of us signed up, and before long Duncan was barking orders at us, and we became really good friends. So this is some of us. We've been out on the sail and we're all feeling pretty good, and Duncan's in the background there. And the lady in the background with the glasses on, she's Rarotongan, so she sails with Marumaru Atu. We call her Mama Liz, and if ever you went into the kitchen, Mama Liz would boot you out. She was the cook. She was the cook, and she's done, the voyaging that she's done has been really incredible. And the rest of us were really, Teresa down the bottom here, she's very experienced sailor now. I'm not sure about who, I can't remember who the lady there is beside me. And but we had a great time with Duncan learning how to sail. He drew us all these sort of maps of the Waka and the various different parts, and I was trying to find mine. I still have it, but I couldn't find it to include it in the slideshow. But he was a really good captain, and he was tough. And the reason for that was that if anything happened out in the ocean, you needed to have your wits about you, especially in a waka like this. And you're with so much, well, I guess it's the same with any voyaging vessel, but the voyaging waka, the double-hulled waka, are extremely, extremely stable because they've got their double hull with that deck there and the little whare. But there's an art to it, and you've got that hoi flapping around and all sorts of things. So you really had to be on top of your game. Yeah. So at that stage, Duncan shared with me that he wanted to write a book. Go to the next slide. He wanted to write a book, and so he took a few years in doing it, and when he finished writing it, he asked me if I'd proofread. I had a background in book publishing, and he asked me if I'd proofread the book and do some editing of it. And I think it got to draft 3 stage. And so what I've got in my slideshow, really, the little excerpts from it, is from draft 3, which probably changed if you go on to, if you purchase the book online through Amazon. It's on Kindle version, and it's probably different, slightly different from what I've got here. But so in doing that, I was permitted into the inner sanctum of Duncan's life as a skipper, also into his life as a human being who, what he went through on the journey, he was very clear about how it affected him, the huge responsibilities that were placed on his shoulders, the anxiety that he had to manage, and there were many moments like that, his mental state of mind. Often with the skippers, whenever they'd been on a long voyage, they had to, their mental capacity was just toast, so they had to go away and just get away from people, get away from, that anything to do with the ocean. So Duncan would take himself off to, if he wasn't going over to visit Anna in Arizona, he was just going off into the bush or somewhere where he could just be alone and just leave everything behind. So his love and concern for the ocean, the environment, the creatures and the people was just limitless, really, and it was a real treasure to get to know him. So let's go back one here. So the voyage of a lifetime, he said that, well, how many people would get to experience this? He'd been voyaging, he'd done a lot of ocean sails and normal, in non-traditional craft, but how many people in their lifetime would get the opportunity to do this? And all thanks to Dieter Pullman and his dedication in allowing this to happen. So his normal welcome to everyone was, if you're new, and I remember him saying to me, "Hi, I'm Duncan." I go, "So?" And then realised, someone said, "That's skipper." So he got it really quickly, but he was pretty much there amongst you all, but when he needed to be, he stepped up and he stepped into those captain's shoes. So the book is 14 chapters, and it'll take you on one of those journeys that encompasses all the senses, all the emotions, and exposes just how endangered our natural world is. So I'm just going to go through chapters. I'm aware our time is getting low, isn't it? Where are we at to now? 15 minutes, oh my God. So chapter 1, surviving the storm. So it opens up in the beginning. It sounds like the Bible, doesn't it? But in the beginning there was chaos. And little snapshots here. But I've added one to this where he says, in the madness of yesterday, we had brought everything, checked it off and dumped it pretty much wherever we could to be stowed properly at sea. The appointed hour was upon us. So they were on their way. And next one. Path of the ancestors. So he says that, and what he was referring to was, at that moment, he got the strange sick feeling in his stomach that they were going to come across rubbish. And he says, there is an elegance in navigating without instruments. The Polynesian compass divides the horizon into 32 houses of just over 11 degrees. So we calibrated our hands to measure one house, 11 degrees. If with an extended hand we could repeatedly measure the angular distance, we can measure the world around us. I put that there because imagine the hand and the hand. And you see them going, oh, they're like that. And two hands, the other one like that, measuring the distance. So they're on their journey, and here they are, aloha, welcome home. Where am I? And so this was a first welcome into Hawaii. It was brief but warm. And he says here, the Hawaiians understood canoe culture. It was their people, the master navigator, Mo Pialuk from Micronesia, who had been responsible for the voyaging renaissance that began 40 years ago. So way back then, Mo Pialuk got involved with the renaissance of the Hawaiian waka, Hikulea and Hikianalea. Hikianalea was built later, but Hikulea had been around for some time. And so this renaissance was going on. At the same time, Hik Busby started the renaissance in Northland with Orere. And then we got Aotearoa 1 was built for the World Cup, the Rugby World Cup that was held in Auckland. So it came through the passageway for the opening ceremony of that. So pleased to say that ocean voyaging is alive and well all these years later. Chapter 4, a living hell. So he's asking the question, what have we done 500 miles north of Hawaii, surrounded by rubbish? What have we done? And I've got here, we were scooting the eastern Pacific gyre, the seventh continent, the Great Garbage Patch, that's what it's called, twice the size of Texas, or as big as France. It's an enormous pool of trash created by currents and weather patterns in the middle of the sea. And when you go on, if you go online and have a look at the images of these gyres, you'll cry. You really will cry. They are massive and they are deep. In some cases, more than 20 kilometres deep of plastics. I know, it's incredible. Where are we now? So I just wanted to share also that when Duncan told me about the arriving in San Francisco, for example, they were arriving into Los Angeles. And he said when they were in the blue water, it was really, really clear. And then the closer they got to Los Angeles, the first thing they saw was a plastic bottle. And then a little further on, the plastic bottle became something else. There was a chili bin. And then they found a TV. And then they found a couch. And then they found a fridge. And all of these things floating on the ocean that they were sailing through. And it just got worse and worse and worse. And so that's what our oceans are actually looking like. All our trash is ending in there. And it doesn't matter what size it is. It's in there. Yeah. Chapter 5, the belly of the beast. Now, I didn't put a picture in here, I don't think, because I just wanted you to imagine that. So if you remember in the video I showed you of the waka crashing through the waves and so forth. So here they are, and they are, where are they now? I think they're coming into the Cocos Islands. Honui screamed towards the beach with hine the other New Zealand waka, Hene about 15 metres off on port, Maru Maru Atua just off on starboard and nowhere to turn as the distance disappeared and the beach loomed ahead. Oh no, this is when they're coming into the beach under the San Francisco Bridge, under the bridge. All of a sudden they were in this ocean and there was the beach, and it was like they were screaming in because the wind was so high and they were scared that they wouldn't stop. And so he says, I shouted to Magnus, and this is Magnus Dunbolt, who was from, I think he was from Sweden, who was also on board as skipper. Where do we stop? They had no idea, but fortunately they were able to manage it and glide up onto the beach and stop. I just find that quite crazy. Chapter 6. Stripped and broken, then pieced together again. These titles are actually the titles of each chapter that Duncan put in there. So he's feeling rather fragile. They're in San Diego. They're feeling rather fragile, and he cracked. He cracked open the last couple of weeks. Quite often you'd see Duncan sitting on the prow there. You know, that's him sitting there in a relaxed state. But he wasn't always relaxed. The anxiety and the mental pressure, he cracked open, and he says, "I felt broken, hugely relieved they were gone." So who he's referring to is that he had a crew, and a lot of them were young people, teenagers that didn't want to take any orders from a Pakeha captain, and didn't want to take responsibility for themselves, getting themselves transport from A to B and all of that. They totally relied on the skipper, young kids, and he'd had enough. So he said, hugely relieved they were gone and the responsibility with them. It had been a heavy load having 4 teenagers to keep track of, but what a lousy way to finish. It was only later in the afternoon, when I was dropped off at an apartment of my own for the night, that the weight of everything came down on me. Yeah. So, you know, for all the crews that are out there and you're reliant on the skipper for so much, and I've seen it, you know, hey Skip, what are we going to do now? What are we going to do about this? So their mind is this constant whirl. And this is on a waka, relatively small in comparison to the Endeavour. So there he is. He's in San Diego, and this is about the time that I met my friend who was going over there to join this waka crew that became involved in the title of this chapter called Life and Death with the Motley Crew. And it really was a motley crew. So they had Walter, and I met all these people. They had Walter, the Mexican-American with a long connection with Hawaii and alcohol. They had Oriana, a lively Brazilian woman from Maui in Hawaii, who was very keen to be cook and loved lap dancing in Mexico. There was Jordan, a young Samoan American who was enthusiastic on Skype, helped a little bit. There was Joe, his English friend from his yachting days. That one I have no comment about. There was Joy, the Filipino-American and one of the Lomi Lomi practitioners, who looked after the crew whenever they needed muscle support and all of that. There was Kaylee, who I don't remember much about, and Murray. Murray was was a New Zealand skipper that had been a long-term friend of Duncan's, also an alcoholic, but they stayed on from the previous year. There was Kai Noah, a young Hawaiian with a strong connection to his tradition, no problem there. Joshua, a very likeable village boy from Fiji, slightly mad in a nice way with lots of sea miles. And Ian and Anik from Aotearoa, New Zealand. Duncan really had concerns about having a couple on board, so they had to be celibate for the whole entire time, unless they went onshore, in which case they had a wonderful time. There was Rico, First Nations from the San Francisco Bay Area, and there was Rua, an artist, a warm, gentle sort of guy who could drift away on occasions, and got drunk on kava and fell down the hold and broke his ribs and had to be transported somewhere. I think it might have been the Tuamotus, had to be transported back to Papiti to heal. Yeah. So that's the motley crew that Duncan's referring to. So it's really funny because the intention was of Dita and the other and Hoturoa Kerr, Barclay Kerr, who was the kaumātua for Haunui, was to get an experienced crew, and this is what the captains expected. They would get experienced crew to do this voyage, but often those crew members bailed, so they had to find replacements, and then those replacements came from people who, yeah, I'd like to do that, I'd like to experience that, or I want to get from here to there, cheap trip, I'll go and do that. And so that's kind of what happened in cases. Well, that's what I say, motley crew, they're from everywhere, yeah. Rua is tangata whenua, but yes, not many at all on that stage of the journey. How are we doing? So we've got about 5 minutes to go, and I've got a whole lot more yet, so I'll go really quickly, but as you can see, there was a lovely passage here, and this is Galapagos in the School of Life, and Duncan was a really deep thinker, and I thought that was really lovely, that little wee poem there. But he also said, a traditional navigation marker for Hawaii, when the length of the cross standing up is the same distance as the bottom star is from the horizon, you're at latitude north 20 degrees. And at that moment, we could have turned due east and sailed right into the islands after about 3 weeks. It was a nice thought and brought a sense of connection with the Ohanawa'a there and all the aloha that went with them. It turned our thoughts to the whānau back home, still many months, and the breadth of the Pacific away. So, staying on that chapter, so some of the jobs there weren't very pleasurable, and Annette had the job, Ian and Annette had the job cleaning out the locker, the veggie locker, and he says, salvable things were put in a bucket for immediate use, and the good stuff was dried off, turned over, and stowed again. It becomes a race to eat everything as time passes and it all ripens. We were doing okay on that front, but we were only 5 days out with several more weeks to go. So this slide is interesting, and they saw this bird standing on a rock. Turned out that, he says, an olive ridley, the most abundant sea turtle in the world, who was obviously pretty happy to pick up hitchhikers. It was quite bizarre to see over the next week and a half a dozen of our feathered friends taking a break at these turtle truck stops. Oh, yes. The wisdom of our ancestors. So this was something that he mentions in the book, is that to bring back the purpose of the voyage, bring back the wisdom of our ancestors. And these waka, if you get to go on one, even though they're a little bit modernised, that it is an amazing experience, and you do get the sense of what you can't help but go back in time to, giving you more of an idea of what it must have felt like for our ancestors coming on these voyages in these types of waka. And then the rain came down. Now, rain, when it's not rained for a long time, is a precious commodity for all of us, regardless of whether we're on a waka or not. But there we are. He says, the crew stripped down to shorts and bikinis, soaked up and waited, then waited some more. It's a well-documented fact that soap is an anti-rain agent. Every voyage, some crew member will test the theory. See a shower coming, strip down, soap up, watch the shower go past and be left covered in soap, standing in the sunshine. Yeah, next one, thank you. 24 hours of 25 knots. Yeah, so there's a picture of the hoy close up. Oh my God, what that hoy can do, but it does take a lot of manpower, and I've seen, like I said before, I've seen that many people on the end of a hoy, and I've been on the end of one myself when we've been in stormy weather. We sailed Utu Yellow up from Auckland up to the Bay of Islands once, and we were, it was not offshore sailing so much as what this was, but my God, we struck a storm, and it It was hard work. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, we're right. Superheroes of the South. So there you are, they're at risk of sunburn and dehydration, and Duncan says at night, the stars had come back. They went away for a while and left us in the dark with nothing but heavy grey clouds in the night. Now they were back, all our clouds had silver linings, and we were carving through the swells, down the trail of the silvery moon. The next morning gave us our first fish since leaving Galapagos. Home again, home again. So they arrived back in Tahiti, and he says, the next day I was mucking around with something on the canoe when a pretty woman came walking down the beach. Hi, fancy seeing you here. I know it's becoming a habit. His long-term girlfriend had arrived in the midst of the afternoon madness. So he says, it was a difficult time for me, like a slightly unwilling bride. He said, I was sitting at a table with Anna, and she started talking to a local woman in French and English. What are you doing here? She asked. I'm a captain on one of the canoes, Duncan said. You? Why are you a captain? That's just wrong. It's wrong to have a papa, European, captain on a Polynesian canoe. So he felt he had those kinds of things to contend with as well. The resistance from people who were still aggrieved by their ancient traditions being appropriated, you know? Yeah. So at that time in Tahiti, Anna joined him there, and at that time his journey with Haunui ended because he was needed to go and voyage and skipper the Papiti, the Tahitian waka. So he said, it was a difficult time for me, like a slightly unwilling bride I was to be given away here. My time on Haunui had come to an end. On the broad marae we stood light rain on our shoulders while ceremonies were performed and kohatu placed. My motley crew, who had come together so well over the months, stood with Hotu off to one side. I had that strange feeling of separation in the pit of my stomach. I had become captain of the Tahitian canoe for Whaiti Te Ao Maohi, their previous captain being unable to continue the voyage. So chapters 11, 12 and 13 continue Duncan's story of voyaging on for Whaiti until he returns back to New Zealand. Oh, sorry. I think you have to leave. Thank you. Nearly finished. Thank you. You'll be able to see it online on the library site. Thank you. Oh, wow. I think that's right, isn't it? Yep. Yeah. So I'm going to skip to the final chapter, chapter 14. Chapter 14. And he's on for Whaiti, and all he can hear is the sound. He's back in Hamilton, and he's training people to sail. And that's what he says, the only sound is the shuffling of paper, gentle scratching of pencils. So he began training new batches of wannabe voyagers, and for the next 4 years continued to live the life he loved, and began writing his book. In March 2016, his book was launched in the cloud in Auckland, and then released as an ebook via Amazon, which is still available today. Go to the next slide. Duncan in June 2000. Duncan's book was launched in March, and in June 2016, Duncan was diagnosed with an aggressive type of cancer, and after much research on treatments, he joined his girlfriend Anna in the USA, and prepared to commence alternative treatment. During that time, so this photograph was of Duncan and Anna on their in the islands. The one previously that had him with Anna and a little boy, that was their wedding day. So Duncan and Anna got married during this time that he was ill, and then on the 19th of September 2016, he passed away. He was only 51, and he had led the life he loved. He championed all the things he believed in, and left the world an honest and inspirational historic record of his adventures of hope or high water, following in the wake of our ancestors. Can you go to the next slide? And he wrote poetry, and I just love this. I lay on the net beneath a million stars in a big white sail. Water gurgled darkly beneath me, a phosphorescent cosmos of its own in every splash. Shooting stars like ideas arced across the sky, insistent, brief, then light slowly seeped in around the edges, softening and expanding. And I lay on the net beneath the remnants of stars and a big white sail, watching the bow gently rise and fall in the soft blue-grey orange of pre-dawn. I wanted that moment to go on forever, and I wished you were here. You were there. So there's Duncan, 1965 to 2016, a very short-lived but full life. Pacific Voyager, author and friend. And it was with grateful appreciation when I spoke to his wife Anna that I was thinking of doing this talk, and with Johan and I should have put Annex Seifert in there. They were really thrilled to have the story brought to light, because it's a story that's largely unknown. We know about Te Moana and all the other things that have happened, including the movie Loimata. And Duncan and I both sailed with Emma, the subject of that movie. And here's Duncan's story, drifting away on the tides of the Amazon, waiting to be discovered. So that's the end of my talk today. I hope you've really enjoyed it, and that it brings to light a sort of more modern day historical account that will one day be an ancient historical account of a man who was brave enough to live life and follow his dreams. But thank you so much for listening. Thank you. Just to finish on, the other thing, I did make a footnote here, is that meeting Duncan and the team and being involved in that inspired my desire to sail, my desire to help make a difference. So I started introducing eco-packaging and exporting it to the Cook Islands because of the polystyrene they were using, and I was working with the Ipukaria Society to bring about change, and now that's happened. So the island is no longer becoming a land dump, a dump for all this polystyrene. It inspired my music and to love the life I live. And this is a little piece that I composed after this voyage when I came back to New Zealand. I thought I was writing an album of music, original music, and I just had to write this. So just to close on, for my Pacific voyaging friends, it's called Navigate. Been at sea for so long, I just wanna put my feet on the ground again. Navigate my way back to your love. Dance around the room for a time, and then with your arms around me, I'll melt into you. Slide through the hours, feeling your love, loving your touch, want you so much. Must have been so crazy for you, never knowing when to expect me home. Guess you've adapted to the way I spread my wings, let my free spirit roam. When the thrill is over, if you can imagine all the people, the partners that were left at home for months and months and sometimes years on end, and their spouses wondering what they're going to come home to. That's kind of the inspiration for this. For as long as you want me to. Self-indulgence and tension, I forget to mention I appreciate all that you do. If you find that you've had enough, my darling, it's starting to get you down, well, don't hold it inside, it's a storm we can ride, we'll navigate a way around. Told you of the places I've been, you're amazing for listening patiently. Know you have your own story to tell, but for now, there's something I have to say. Couldn't live without you, I'd just fall apart. Want to spend a lifetime getting your love, loving your touch, want you so much. I just navigate my way back to you, my baby, for as long as you want me to. Self-indulgence and tension, I forget to mention I appreciate all that you do.
If you find that you've had enough, my darling, it's starting to get you down, well, don't hold it inside. It's a storm we can ride. We'll navigate a way around.
Ngā mihi nui ki a koutou, thank you very much.